story.
As makers announce the release date of The Devil Wears Prada 2, we take a look at all the upcoming remakes, reboots and sequels. Dive into the world of music with a never-seen-before auction. And find out why baby blue is the color of the year. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
This week on the West Asia Post. As Gaza faces one of the world's biggest war-induced hunger crisis, Benjamin Netanyahu's claim on Palestinian prisoners shocks the world. Also on the show, we talk about Erdogan's move to extend his stay at Turkey's presidential office and Kuwait's decision to strip thousands of citizenship status.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, only on WION. World is One.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Raisha Saigal. Our cover story tonight is from the Ukraine-Russia war, where US President Donald Trump has set a 2-week deadline for his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to make progress on ceasefire talks. But the question we ask tonight is, if Putin is using that time frame to press advantage on the battlefield. Also on the show, we will tell you about a renewed surge in hostilities between the United States of America and China. And this time, it is unfolding in classrooms, in research labs, and the global tech supply chain. Finally on the show, according to reports, Israel could make preparations to carry out an attack on Iran in a span of 7 hours. The question we ask tonight is, can Israel unilaterally attack Iran? All that and a lot more lined up for you on the show. Let's get you started.
We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not.
Our top focus on Gravitas today. Trump's 2-week clock is ticking. Is Putin using that time to press his advantage? That's the big question we are asking tonight on the show. This, as Russian forces ramp up their assault in northeastern Ukraine. US President Donald Trump has effectively set a 2-week deadline for Vladimir Putin, warning of a different response if the Russian leader keeps stalling any kind of peace efforts between Russia and Ukraine.
Do you believe the Russians are being disrespectful when they say that your criticisms of Putin are simply an emotional response? And do you still believe that Putin actually wants to end the war?
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, we're going to find out very soon. We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently, but it'll take about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Trump has so far held back on new sanctions, saying he does not want to jeopardize chances of a ceasefire. This even as he accused Putin of intentionally playing and delaying negotiations and expressed disappointment over renewed Russian bombing. On the ground, the Kremlin seems to be using this supposed window to escalate, and that's by stretching Ukrainian defenses and seizing more territory before the rules of engagement possibly change. It's Thursday, but the tensions have been building since last Sunday. In the past few days, Russian missiles rained down on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, killing at least 13 people, including children, and injuring dozens more. These latest strikes are some of the largest and deadliest since the war began in 2022 and have continued through the week, with, of course, no signs of slowing down. And so, it wouldn't be a stretch to view Trump's statement against Russia and Russian President Vladimir Putin as a sort of warning. Trump has posted repeatedly on social media calling Putin absolutely crazy and accusing him of playing with fire, because behind those words, you see, is real frustration in Washington, D.C. Despite months of negotiations, including a 2-hour phone call with Putin that Trump said went very well, after that call, Putin claimed that he was ready to work on a memorandum for peace. But the tensions on the battlefield have not died down. Both the sides have escalated attacks. Instead of backing down, they have accused the other of escalating. Russia has unleashed a wave of drone and missile attacks, and that so-called memorandum, which Putin said they're working on, that is still missing. Trump now says the US will know within 2 weeks if Putin is, and I'm quoting him here, tapping us along, and warned that if he is, the US response will change. But that raises another question. What will Trump's response be? Another round of sanctions against Russia? Well, that has not proved effective in the past. What's the guarantee it will work now? The White House insists that all sanctions from the Biden era are still in place. But critics say the current approach taken by Trump has only emboldened the Kremlin without containing the hostilities. Even Trump's own remarks suggest doubt. He recently posted that something has happened to Putin, comments that the Kremlin saw as an emotional overload. This week, Trump's rhetoric has escalated again. He has said lots of bad things would have happened to Russia if not for his involvement. Comments met with sharp rebuttals from Moscow. Putin's aide, Yuri Yoshakov, reportedly called Trump not sufficiently informed and accused Ukraine of escalating what he described as terrorist attacks on Russian cities. But as the rhetoric heats up, so do the battlefield realities. On Thursday, the Kremlin said it was still waiting for a response from Ukraine, and that's on Russia's proposal to hold the next round of peace talks in Istanbul. The talks are meant to begin discussions on draft memorandums for a peace accord. Russia has also stated its demands for the ceasefire. So what exactly does Vladimir Putin want? According to reports, the demands are clear and sweeping. Number one, a written pledge from major Western powers explicitly ruling out any further NATO expansion to the east. That means no NATO membership for Ukraine. Number two, Putin wants Ukraine to remain neutral, not aligned with the West or NATO. And also, he also wants some Western sanctions lifted, especially those targeting the Russian economy. There's also a demand for the release of Russia's foreign frozen sovereign assets, billions locked up in Western banks. So where does Ukraine stand in all of this? Nowhere really. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky has accused Moscow of dragging its feet and slammed it for delaying the peace process. So what's actually happening on the ground? The war grinds on. On Wednesday, Russia claimed it had captured 2 more Ukrainian settlements, one in Sumy and one in Donetsk. Ukraine responded with drone strikes targeting key Russian military industrial complexes that are a part of a broader drone war intensifying on both the sides. Russia says it intercepted nearly 300 Ukrainian drones overnight across multiple regions. Kiev, meanwhile, says it shot down 71 out of 88 drones and 6 missiles launched by Russia just hours earlier. So both the sides are clearly trading accusations of provocation, sabotage and escalation, and all this despite renewed diplomatic contact. Simply put, Putin is tightening his grip. Trump is running out of patience. And caught in the middle, Ukraine, which is bracing for whatever comes next. The next 2 weeks could determine whether this war finally moves towards peace or explodes into something far worse. Germany's new silence on arms is sending shockwaves. Kiev has secured over $6 billion in fresh military aid from Berlin. Germany says the money will be used for joint missile manufacturing, which will include long-range weapons. But the fate of Taurus remains a mystery. Russia vows a dramatic, asymmetric response if Germany crosses the red line. Clearly, the tensions are peaking. Our next report telling you more.
As the battles intensify across eastern Ukraine, Germany has introduced a shift in its stance. Breaking from the West's usual arms shipment announcement, Berlin now declares it will no longer publicly confirm what weapons it supplies to Kiev. This seismic policy shift comes after fierce clashes around Kharkiv and Donetsk, where Russia is pushing hard, sensing cracks in Western unity. But Berlin's stance is now enraging Moscow.
Wir werden deshalb den Druck auf Russland.
We will continue to increase the pressure on Russia. We are doing this in order to weaken the war machine of Moscow. But we are doing it also to open to path to negotiations.
Wir werden in diesem
Chancellor Merz's government has lifted all range restrictions on arms sent to Kiev, empowering the Ukrainian forces to strike military targets deep inside Russia, a move that has drawn a sharp warning from Moscow. Yet, Merz maintains a strategic silence on the most potent weapon in Germany's arsenal, the Taurus missile. The Taurus is a game changer. With a range exceeding 500 kilometers, it can hit fortified bunkers and command centers, targets previously considered out of reach for Ukrainian forces. Now, if Germany sends Taurus, then Ukraine can use it to target the Russian capital. The missile's advanced navigation and bunker-busting warhead makes it a nightmare for Russian planners, who have spent months preparing electronic countermeasures in anticipation of its arrival. The Kremlin warns any Ukrainian strike using German Taurus missiles will be treated as Germany's direct involvement in the war.
So Germany's direct involvement in the war is already clear. Germany is sliding down the same trajectory it followed a couple of times in the last century, down towards its collapse. I hope that responsible politicians in this country will make right conclusions and stop the madness after all.
Moscow is sharpening the tone. The deputy head of Russian Parliament Duma says that the Russian forces will shoot down the Taurus and have Germany in its crosshairs for its introduction. But with Germany refusing to name the weapons it will supply to Ukraine, the retaliation becomes a guessing game. This is a dangerous new precedent. The West has always underscored transparency as a signal of its resolve in its support for Ukraine. Now, as Germany flips the script, Moscow is being left to imagine the worst. In geopolitics, silence can speak louder than any explosion. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
A storm of fire and steel has shattered the quietness of a secret Ukrainian airfield. Russian forces launched a devastating strike using the formidable Tornado multiple rocket launcher system, destroying a hidden site where Ukraine was preparing to launch drone attacks deep inside Russian territory. The attack marks a new escalation in the invisible war of nerves, where every strike is both a tactical blow and a psychological message. Take a look.
In a stunning and precise offensive, Russian forces deployed their feared Tornado multiple launch rocket system to obliterate a secret Ukrainian airfield. This wasn't just another strike, it was a direct hit on a military base reportedly used to launch drone attacks deep into Russian territory. Kyiv's shadow operations just lost a major artery. Barkovo airfield is located in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. It's a small airfield but critical for the Ukrainian Air Force. The airfield also reportedly houses AN-2 jets. This latest strike underscores how Moscow is not just retaliating against Ukrainian drone attacks, it is hunting down Ukraine's critical war infrastructure with increasing accuracy. The Tornado doesn't just strike, it annihilates. Designed for large-scale saturation bombardment, the Tornado S variant is a technological monster. With a range exceeding 120 kilometers, guided precision and a destructive payload, it delivers hell in coordinated salvos. Intelligence suggests that the Ukrainian airfield was a launchpad for long-range drone missions aimed at Russian fuel depots and command posts. It was not just a military asset, it was a symbol of Ukraine's asymmetric resilience. Now it's severely damaged. Despite billions in aid and cutting-edge equipment supplied to Kyiv, from Patriot systems to NASAMS, none stopped the Tornado barrage. The Russian MLRs either slipped through gaps or overwhelmed defense grids, designed more for ballistic missiles than rapid-fire barrages. Earlier, Russia claimed that its Iskander missiles had destroyed US-made Patriot defense systems in Ukraine. As Ukraine scrambles to patch its aerial blind spots, Moscow is sending a loud, unmistakable message. No place is safe. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
We now turn our attention towards a renewed surge in hostilities between the United States of America and China. An escalation that could wreck the already fragile trade truce between the world's two largest economies, which was only recently agreed upon. To put it simply, US President Donald Trump has thrown two aggressive punches at China, number one, targeting Chinese tech companies, and number two, Chinese students. Let's first start with the first blow. China's semiconductor ambitions and its ability to develop cutting-edge AI, artificial intelligence chips, have taken a major hit. The Trump administration has told American software companies to immediately stop selling software used to design semiconductors to China. Software that are extremely important, essential. So without access to the American software, China's dream of achieving tech self-reliance, that suffers a major setback. And this is not an isolated move. The White House had already made it rather harder for Chinese companies to get their hands on cutting-edge chips. Last month, the US limited AI-specific NVIDIA chip exports for the Chinese market, while at the start of this month, the US warned companies against using AI chips made by Chinese tech giant Huawei, citing violation of US export laws. So what's at stake for China amid all of this? Well, the answer is a lot. A lot is at stake for China at this point of time. AI, quantum computing, and even military innovation all depend on advanced chips. That's why the Chinese government has poured billions of dollars into its semiconductor industry, aiming to strengthen domestic manufacturing and become less reliant on America. And then there's the second punch. And this time, this punch affects thousands of Chinese families. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced that America will begin aggressively revoking student visas held by Chinese nationals. The Trump administration singled out Chinese students working in critical fields and students having any connection to the Chinese Communist Party. At one point, Chinese students represented the largest foreign student population in America, topping nearly 372,000 during the 2019-2020 academic year. In fact, since 2009, Chinese nations made up the highest number of global students in the US, until they were surpassed by India last year. It is estimated that over 270,000 Chinese nationals study at American colleges. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson accused the United States of weaponizing national security concerns to suppress and discriminate against Chinese citizens, calling the visa revocations politically motivated and a deliberate attempt to damage cultural and educational exchanges between the US and China.
The U.S. has unreasonably canceled Chinese students' visas under the pretext of ideology and national security, which has seriously damaged the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese students and disrupted normal cultural exchanges between the two countries. China firmly opposes this and has lodged representations with the U.S. This politically discriminatory practice by the U.S. exposes the lie of so-called freedom and openness that the U.S. has always touted.
Now, all of this puts the trade truce between the US and China in a limbo. The 90-day window to resolve trade issues between Washington and Beijing is closing fast, and with each policy move, the odds are only becoming more difficult. Trump's war on China isn't being waged in battlefields at this point of time. It is unfolding in classrooms, in research labs, and down the global tech supply chain. This entire matter between the two countries is no longer restricted to being just a trade dispute at this point of time. Let's now tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We will tell you how US's primary foreign intelligence service, the CIA, perhaps cannot find enough spies to recruit. From China, we will tell you how the country is working on a new robotic defense system for its Tiangong space station. Finally, we'll tell you how a Gen Z gender divide is reshaping democracy, with South Korea's young women expected to lead a broad political against the main conservative party at the presidential polls. In the heart of West Asia, a storm is brewing once again. This as the United States of America inches towards reviving a nuclear deal with Iran. Latest reports now claim that the US intelligence believes that Israel could make preparations to carry out an attack on Iran in as little as 7 hours. Yes, that's the window given by Israel. Or shall we say that's the notice given by Netanyahu. No build-up, no countdown, just a swift attack. However, the U.S. intelligence officials doubt the efficacy of a unilateral strike by Israel. Before we tell you why, listen in to what the U.S. President Donald Trump had to say.
Well, I'd like to be honest. Yes, I did. Next question, please.
Just last on sanctions.
I did, yeah.
If Senate Republicans want to push
It's not a warning. I said I don't think it's appropriate.
What exactly did you tell him?
I just said I don't think it's appropriate. We're having very good discussions with him, and I said I don't think it's appropriate right now.
Trump has warned Netanyahu against striking Iran, stressing that a military strike on Iran now will be inappropriate because the U.S. and Iran are close to a deal. But is Bibi listening? According to reports, Israeli officials have told Washington that a strike could be carried out even if a nuclear agreement is reached between the U.S. and Iran. But does Israel have the capacity to strike Iran unilaterally? U.S. military officials are skeptical about how effective an Israeli strike conducted without any kind of American support would be. There are a slew of technical and geographical issues as to why an Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear facilities could be an issue. Firstly, Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure is underground and heavily fortified. Hence, an effective attack by Israel will require U.S. assistance for both mid-air refueling and munitions. Two of Iran's nuclear facilities in Fordo and Natanz are buried deep underground under several meters of rock and reinforced concrete. The second reason is Israel's air power. Iran is 1,000 kilometers away from Israel. Even if Israel plans to launch a military operation against Iran, it will need to use its fighter jets that will need refueling in the air. Even though Israel has a powerful weapon arsenal, like I mentioned, Iran has hidden its nukes deep inside the mountains. Perhaps the only weapon capable of hitting them are in America's arsenal. Israel will need something like the GBU-43B. It is a massive ordnance air blast bomb, also known as the mother of all bombs. This is the United States of America's biggest non-nuclear weapon. It unleashes 11 tons of explosives and is designed to target areas like caves and tunnels. The Moab unleashes a destructing fireball that incinerates anything within a range of 30 feet after it detonates first. And Israel's closest equivalent to this is its bunker buster bombs. But experts say that the damage would likely be limited. So, now what about Iran? The IRGC commander says Iran is ready for all scenarios. Speaking at an event, Major General Hossein Salami said Iran is ready for all scenarios, asserting that our fingers are on the trigger. Despite decades of international sanctions and economic isolation, Iran has developed formidable military capabilities. It is ranked 16th out of 145 countries in global military strength. So when we compare the defense capabilities of both the countries, Iran has a total population of 87,590,000, while Israel's population is 9 million. The number of active personnel in Iran is at 610,000, while Israel is at 170,000. When we talk about the defense budget, Iran is pegged at $9 billion, while Israel is pegged at $24 billion. Israel has 186 fighter jets compared to Iran's 241. The number of tanks Iran has is 1,996, while Israel has 1,370. Lastly, Iran has 65,000 armored vehicles and Israel has 43,407 armored vehicles. So clearly, Iran is capable of packing a counter-punch if Israel attacks. The last time tensions escalated between Iran and Israel was in October 2024. Back then, the US had supplied THAAD and Israeli Arrow systems to stop the Houthi missiles. However, one thing is clear right now. While Israel is adamant on striking Iran unilaterally, Tel Aviv seems to lack the full spectrum of capabilities for a decisive unilateral strike. That seems to rather make its pronouncements sound more like threats than a plan. While the war of words between Israel and Iran continue to dominate the headlines, today at the United Nations, attention briefly shifted to the children in Gaza. Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, delivered an emotional address to the Security Council today. Holding back tears, he spoke about the suffering of children in Gaza, slamming his fist on the table as he paused to regain composure.
It's unbearable. How could anyone tolerate this sorrow? Excuse me, Mr. President. I have grandchildren. I know what they mean to their families. And to see this situation of the Palestinians without us having hearts to do something is beyond the ability of any normal human being to tolerate.
Since the breakdown of the ceasefire in March, over 1,300 children have died in Gaza. But these numbers cannot capture the sound of a mother whispering apologies to a child who will never wake up. At the Security Council session, officials painted a grim picture of starvation, of medical shortages, and the psychological trauma for Gaza's children, for these kids. The total Palestinian death toll in Gaza has now reached 54,000. In just the last 24 hours, 28 more Palestinians were killed and 179 others injured. That's in Israeli strikes across various parts of the Gaza Strip. Over 16,800 children have been killed, and that's nearly a third of all deaths. Among the dead, 931 babies were under the age of 1, and 356 were born and killed since October 2023. The Israeli Defense Forces say that they are continuing operations against Hamas. Today also marks day 601 of the war in Gaza. And on the ground, Gaza's hospitals are in ruins. No electricity, no medicine, no food. And the children of Gaza, they're not just dying from their wounds, but from a world that just does not exist for them. US President Donald Trump's tariff measures kicked up a storm in global markets when they were announced in early April. What followed after that was panic, power games, economic setbacks, and full-blown trade wars with some of America's crucial trading partners. But the question we ask tonight is, can tariffs or trade wars actually stop wars? Well, arguing in the court, Trump's officials said that tariffs were crucial tools in managing global conflicts and trade. Well, here's what happened. Taking the wind out of what was rather Trump's sweeping and volatile global tariff moves, the Court of International Trade ruled that Trump exceeded his authority in imposing tariffs on all imported goods. It called an immediate halt to his signature trade war policy. The court also said that the U.S. Constitution gives the Congress exclusive authority to regulate commerce with other countries, one that is not overridden by the president's emergency powers to safeguard the U.S. economy. The court also cited grounds of illegality to dismiss Trump's blanket tariff orders issued since January this year, with the final trigger being Trump's Liberation Day tariffs that stood invalidated with immediate effect. Not just that, the court also ordered the Trump team to issue fresh orders reflecting the change within a span of 10 days. The court's decision created ripple effects, with financial markets cheering at the ruling. The US dollar surging against currencies such as the euro, yen and the Swiss franc in particular, and Trump's trading partners, especially China, rising to the occasion to capitalize on this move, urging the US to end its erroneous practice of imposing unilateral tariffs.
China always maintains that there are no winners in a trade war and that protectionism offers no way out. Since the unilateral tariffs were introduced by the U.S., not only have they failed to resolve any of its own issues, but they have also severely undermined the international economic and trade order and business operation and people's daily lives and consumption.
And coming back to the question of trade used as a tool to stop conflict, what did Trump's officials specifically mean with that? Well, representing Trump in the court, Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer claimed that Trump used tariffs and trade to ease tensions between India and Pakistan and to pressure China into trade talks. Lutnick said, and I'm quoting him here, the ceasefire understanding between India and Pakistan was only achieved after Trump offered trading access to the two nuclear-armed neighbors. The top officials even claimed that if Trump's tariffs don't secure a legal win, it could lead to China acting out, as well lead to India and Pakistan resuming the military actions. They also told the judges that the U.S. government believes that Trump's actions help secure a fragile peace between India and Pakistan. This is a claim clearly refuted by India yet again. Responding to this, India asserted its position that arriving at a ceasefire understanding with Pakistan after Operation Sindoor was not linked to any discussions on trade with the US. Addressing a press briefing, India's Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said India's position on US claims has been well articulated. Take a listen.
From the time Operation Sindoor commenced on 7th May till the understanding on cessation of firing and military action on 10th May, there were conversations between Indian and US leaders on the evolving military situation. The issue of trade or tariff did not come up in any of those discussions.
This is, by the way, not the first time that Trump has claimed credit for brokering peace between India and Pakistan. On May 10th, when India and Pakistan reached a ceasefire, Trump was quick to comment that he, in fact, had mediated the peace deal. On April 2nd, Trump imposed import duties on most of US's trading partners. A 10% baseline tariff was placed on most countries, along with steeper reciprocal tariffs handed down to dozens of nations and blocs, including the EU, UK, Canada, Mexico and China, as well as India. For Chinese goods, the reciprocal tariffs were raised to 145%, that were later brought down to 30%. During the 90-day tariff pause, with China too reducing its tariffs on US imports to 10%. The UK and the US have also announced a deal on lower tariffs between the two governments. And now the current ruling seeks to overhaul much of Trump's tariff measures in the pipeline, potentially ushering in major changes.
It's interesting because the court has said that the president sort of overstepped in that he used emergency powers being trade deficits, which, are really not an emergency at all in economics. But that probably means, perhaps if he puts economic sanctions on Russia or Iran, to what extent can the courts interfere in that. They may decide that sanctions is of geopolitical significance, but tariffs are not. So it does get us into some murky waters, I think, legally into what's the role of the President and the Congress as opposed to the courts.
So what will the Trump team do next? The Trump administration says it intends to appeal the ruling to the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. Experts also say that Trump could seek other routes to deploy additional tariffs, which means that the final word is yet to be said for global trade as well as the markets. The CIA, or the Central Intelligence Agency, seems to be facing a hiring crisis. Earlier this month, it hit upon a new trick to persuade disgruntled Chinese officials to spy for the US. What's that? Well, it's a couple of Hollywood-quality videos that play on divisions within Chinese President Xi Jinping's government and offer instructions on how to anonymously get in touch with the CIA. While one video highlights the vast wealth disparities between working-class Chinese and Communist Party elites, another depicts how top party officials suddenly disappear. These videos, narrated in Mandarin, are a part of a new CIA strategy for recruiting potential foreign agents from afar, thus begging a very important question: what if such a strategy backfires? Apparently, this is a calculated move, one which the CIA has tried earlier. In 2023, the spy agency released similar videos to recruit Russians disillusioned by the Ukraine war. The CIA claims it did succeed because some Russians allegedly contacted the CIA under the condition of anonymity. The CIA believes it will work now on potential Chinese spies as well. Whatever the fate of these unsophisticated methods, one thing seems clear: the CIA right now needs more spies and probably a more refined approach to the business of spying itself. Imagine robots going to the moon or a space station run by bots. With China's advances and breakthroughs in space technology, these may just be the new normal. In its latest, China is manufacturing a new robotic defense system for its Tiangong space station to intercept suspicious spacecraft and push them away. And for doing the job with utmost precision, China is now deploying self-defense bots that can thrust away from the orbital station if an unidentified object approaches the space station or other critical space infrastructure. As per a report from the South China Morning Post, Sun Zhibin of the National Space Science Center in Beijing outlined key plans for China's Tiangong space station and unveiled details of the project. And this is a major feat in what can be called the militarization of space. Launched in 2021, this orbital outpost is one of the key showcases of China's space leadership. In recent years, China has challenged America's space science and research dominance. Last year, Chinese astronauts performed a 9-hour spacewalk, breaking a record previously set by NASA astronaut aboard the ISS. And now, the self-defense bots. All this is set to take its level several notches up. Even as military space missions per se go against the principles set out in the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which is a foundational document for international space law, it will an increasingly divided world and also fragmented global politics change that? Well, that's the question for which we'll have to keep a close watch. Just days before France's parliament releases a report on its Cold War-era nuclear testing, reports claim the French government tried its best to spin and suppress the truth. Documents obtained by an investigative outlet and seen by French newspaper Le Monde and UK newspaper The Guardian reveal that France's Atomic Energy Commission, the CEA, spent tens of thousands of euros trying to discredit scientific research that exposed the impact of its nuclear experiments in French Polynesia between 1966 and 1996. That's when France conducted 193 nuclear tests in the remote Morora and Fangthagofa atolls. A 2021 book titled Toxic, based on 2,000 pages of declassified government files and dozens of interviews, looked at just 6 of those tests and found many more people were exposed to radiation than France had ever admitted. A year later, the CEA published 5,000 booklets and distributed them across Polynesia. The booklets were titled Nuclear Tests in French Polynesia, Why, How, and with What Consequences. The CEA reportedly flew 4 representatives to French Polynesia to downplay the findings at a cost of over 90,000 euros or around $97,000. The CEA reportedly claimed that Toxic's authors lacked the expertise to understand nuclear science. It also claimed that radiation contamination was limited and that France had always acted transparently and with respect for the health of local communities. But the research perhaps tells a different story. One nuclear test in 1974 alone may have exposed 110,000 people, essentially the entire population of Tahiti and nearby islands in French Polynesia. That's to radiation, doses high enough to qualify them for cancer compensation. And yet, by 2023, fewer than half of the 2,846 compensation claims filed by victims were even deemed admissible. Why? Because the French government reportedly consistently underestimated the radiation doses involved, making most claimants ineligible. A French parliamentary inquiry that has already interviewed over 40 lawmakers, scientists, soldiers and survivors is about to issue its final report. At the center remains this very important question. Did France knowingly downplay the risks and hide the scale of contamination? France's own nuclear safety agency, the ASNR, has now admitted uncertainties in the CEA's radiation dose calculations. It also said it is impossible to prove that exposed individuals received lower than threshold doses of compensation. Furthermore, 46 of the 193 tests were reportedly atmospheric. That means explosions in open air, not underground. That means radioactive fallout rained down on civilians, military personnel, and site workers before the testing moved underground in 1974. And radiation-linked cancers are reportedly widespread in the islands even today. The French army, rather, has admitted up to 2,000 of its own soldiers may have been exposed to enough radiation to cause cancer. French President Emmanuel Macron has acknowledged what he called France's debt to Polynesia. But the facts remain radioactive, and France, despite all its booklets and campaigns, may not be able to contain the fallout any longer, especially after the parliamentary report becomes public. South Korea heads to the elections on June 3rd, and this time it's just not about who's winning, it's about who's walking away from each other at the ballot box. Young South Korean women are expected to punish the ruling conservatives, leading a backlash after months of political chaos. But the young men, they are going the opposite direction, and they are not alone. Across democracies worldwide, a stark gender divide is opening up in Gen Z politics. According to a report by news agency Reuters, young men are increasingly backing right-wing parties and young women are leaning left. What once felt like a generational tide for progressives is now splitting in two. In election after election, from Asia to Europe to North America, one thing is becoming clear: the young men are angry and they are heading to the right. In its report, Reuters found several first-time South Korean voters backing right-wing Reform Party contestant. Lee Jong-sok, he has been described as an anti-feminist contestant in the upcoming polls, as he has promised to shut down South Korea's Ministry of Gender Equality. But Lee Jong-suk is not the story. It is the young male voters who say that they will vote for him. For young South Korean men, there's a resentment that runs deep. For example, South Korea's compulsory military service, it is required only for men. The young male voters say that at the prime of the youth, they are pulled away from life, from jobs, from education. Meanwhile, female peers don't have to do that. They ask, how is that fair?
What makes me angry about the society is the fact that only men are required to serve in the military. As a young man, I find this to be one of the most unfair realities of living in Korea. At the prime of their youth, at 21 or 22 years old, young men, unlike their female peers, are unable to fully engage in various activities in society because they have to serve 18 months in the military.
Well, that frustration is turning into political fuel for the young men. According to a recent Gallup Korea poll, nearly 30% of men aged 18 and 29 plan to vote for the Reform Party, while only 3% of women said the same. More than half of young South Korean men support conservative parties. Meanwhile, nearly half the young women are rooting for the liberal Democratic contestant. The gap, it narrows with age. But among Gen Z, the split is a wide chasm. It's not just about military service. According to political economist Sean Lee, many young men feel cornered, unable to land good jobs or buy homes or start families as well. Take a listen.
Women are also facing huge competition for a good job and all the rest. But one difference here is that if you look at young men, when they compare their advances in education and in the labor market, they can see clearly that they have enjoyed more privileges, they have made more progress than their mother's generation. Whereas young men do not see that way, and that is not the case. They are struggling ever more than their father's generation.
And well, they are blaming feminism for that, according to the report. With barely any immigration to scapegoat in South Korea, these young men are turning their resentment towards women, accusing them of unfair advantages in hiring and workplace policies. But here's the thing. This trend isn't limited to Korea. In France, young men overwhelmingly backed Marine Le Pen's far-right party last year. In the UK, Gen Z men are more likely than women to vote Conservative and more likely to be unemployed or out of school. Across the West, immigration and diversity policies are the new battlegrounds. Angry young men see them as threats to the future. Even in Germany's February election, the far-right AfD surged, winning over 27% of male voters aged 18 to 24. Young women, meanwhile, ran the other way. 35% young German women backed the far-right left Linke Party. The difference in votes according to gender was only a few percentage points, except when it came to voting for the AfD. The gender gap between men and women voting for the AfD was 7%. The gender difference for the other parties was only 2 to 3%. It's not just Gen Z. Even millennials, now in their 30s and early 40s, are also showing signs of political fracture. In Canada, conservative support increased among men aged 35 and 54 in recent elections. For many, it's a response to economic frustration and a growing relief that the system just isn't working for them. According to pollsters, men at this age are reaching perhaps a breaking point. Social media has only amplified the rage. Canadian pollster Nick Nanos described it as democracy's angry young men symptom. And this is especially evident in regions which has been hit hard by the decline of blue-collar jobs. In the US, during President Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, he was able to win over young white and Hispanic men. But it alienated the young women. Roughly half of young men voted Trump, 61% of young women voted Kamala Harris, and young black voters, regardless of gender, overwhelmingly chose Harris and not Trump. That was about America. What about Australia, where voting is compulsory? The same gender war hasn't taken hold yet. Experts say compulsory voting may be acting as a kind of equalizer, diluting the extremes. But the big question remains, how does this divide get resolved? According to pollsters, it will not happen until governments tackle the root causes, which are unaffordable housing, unstable jobs, and a looming mental health crisis among young men. Because beneath this anger is something more fragile, a generation that feels betrayed by the system, by the economy, and increasingly by each other. And if they stop talking, the consequences could be bigger than just a few elections. They'll be the cost of a future where the two sides never learned how to agree on anything. With that, we're now slipping into a very short break. Thanks very much for staying with us. You are watching WION The World. Stay tuned.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in. India's unprecedented diplomatic outreach to the world. Multi-party delegations expose, isolate, counter Pakistan's terror machinery as a threat to peace-loving, development-oriented humanity.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Wow, folks, we all know the story.
As makers announce the release date of The Devil Wears Prada 2, we take a look at all the upcoming remakes, reboots and sequels. Dive into the world of music with a never-seen-before auction. And find out why baby blue is the color of the year. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
This week on the West Asia Post. As Gaza faces one of the world's biggest war-induced hunger crisis, Benjamin Netanyahu's claim on Palestinian prisoners shocks the world. Also on the show, we talk about Erdogan's move to extend his stay at Turkey's presidential office and Kuwait's decision to strip thousands of citizenship status.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, only on WION. World is One.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Beyond World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu appoints Major General David Zinni as the new head of the domestic intelligence service Shin Bet. The Israeli government approves 22 new illegal Jewish settlements in the Palestinian territory of occupied West Bank. Its finance minister said on Thursday a move that could deepen divisions with some close allies who've threatened sanctions over these illegal Israeli settlements on Palestinian lands. An American judge is to temporarily halt the Trump administration's efforts to block the Harvard University from enrolling and hosting foreign students. And Russia says it is still waiting for Ukraine to say whether it will attend the peace talks in Istanbul on Monday after Kiev demands Moscow to send its peace terms before agreeing for the meeting. Netherlands military agrees to ease border tensions with Cambodia after a Cambodian soldier was killed in a frontier clash. A South African court sentences a woman to life in prison for kidnapping and then selling her 6-year-old daughter in a case that has horrified and shocked the country.